So this is the card that I've been making with you today. Quite a fairly straightforward card, but again it's just showing you different techniques, which sometimes when we look through the Facebook group, there's occasionally people asking questions, how do we line up different dies, how do you do this, how do you do that? So sometimes it's just nice just to go sort of back to basics a little bit. It's just show you something sort of quite straightforward, showcase a couple of the dies that Lisa still has in stock that are, I do believe they're still on sale on her website also. So these lives just give us that opportunity to do that. So today I'll be using the Duo background dies, which is the stitched squares. That also comes with the circles also, you may have those. And also the mini messages. Again, there are two of these. I have the You Inspire Me one, and I think the other one was Kind Friends, was it? I wish my memory was better. But they're a lovely, beautiful die to use, and they work really well together. But also what I'm using in the background here is Lisa's design paper too. I'll just pick out the ones I'm using is the Vintage Garden actually. I'll just bring this in here. It's the Vintage Garden. They're single-sided sheets. You've got 24 sheets in total with 8 different designs. So you've got a beautiful choice. They are 8 by 8 inch in square, so a lovely size to use. So perfect for all your different card shapes, obviously up to your 8 by 8, your large 8 by 8 square cards. I like to use the smaller square cards. This is measuring probably just under 6 inches square. Yeah, it's the ones I usually use. I've got a good stash of them, so literally just under 6 inches square. And you'll notice actually the reason why I went for a square card is because I want to use these stitched square dies, but these are actually a rectangle die. These are for the slimline collection of dies that Lisa's done. So they actually measure just over 8 centimetres, which is about 3 1/4 inches wide. But what we wanted to do obviously is just show you that you can extend this pattern, particularly with the duo backgrounds, because they are such a repeating pattern. And I just wanted to show you, quite straightforward, how we can actually extend this to create a square card. You can obviously extend this so it goes lengthways also, so if you wanted to make a full DL card and make this longer, the process that I'll show you in just a second will work exactly the same if you were to extend sort of lengthways also. And this would work again if you had the stitched circle backgrounds. Then I've put the You Inspire Me plate on the top. I've actually paper pieced this, so again I just wanted to show you, for those who haven't paper pieced before, how we go about doing that. It's really quite straightforward, and it's probably something that is a real favourite of some people's to do if you really like die cutting. A lot of people would find that really sort of therapeutic and almost puzzle-like, because you're replacing the pieces in. But also what I wanted to show you, which didn't come across on the photograph actually, was this is actually removable. So what I wanted to do is actually make this into a removable plate. It would leave this card as a nice sort of beautiful card, which you could even frame if you didn't have the bow in. But I just wanted to sort of make this with a removable gift, which you can either create into a bookmark, which I think would be a really nice a bookmark. It'd be really nice something to put a little message on the back for somebody to slip into their wallet or their purse. You could even put a little magnetic strip on the back, and it can be a fridge magnet as well. It's just and it just a really lovely little message to give to somebody, and to say when it's a little gift like this is given with meaning, these words could have a huge amount of meaning behind someone and sort of really perk up somebody's day. But what I've done, I wanted to think of a way of actually I could create this to be a removable element on the card without adding anything extra on the back. So I've used, if you see here, just a couple of little pieces which have actually come out from the die cut. So this is sort of repurposing all those little bits and pieces that we have left over after we die cut something, and I think that works really well. So I'll show you how we get round to doing that as well. So as always, I've prepped as I've gone along because there's a lot of die cutting in this. Initially I shall show you how we go about lining up the die cuts for the grid work. So I've got myself, I'm actually using different colourways for the card I'm making today. So I've die cut the lattice, sort of the open squares from the duo backgrounds set here, and I've die cut that through once and just run that through the die cutting machine, and that's very straightforward, and I've actually kept all the insert pieces that have come out from there. So I'll come back to those in a bit later. So to line this up to make a square card, initially I sort of lined this up and it fits perfectly onto a 6-inch card, which again just makes these dies so useful. Lisa has got the dimensions absolutely spot on to make them so usable across the board, but you can see here that we have this extra space that we need to fill. So we take our die cut piece off the machine, and basically what we can do, we can actually replace the die back into what we've cut already. And if you haven't done this before, you can just spend a couple of minutes just filling in and just seeing where that die cut just slots back into place. And because of the nature of the die, we have the raised lip. That's what slots back into the apertures that we've already cut and pretty much locks that in place, as you see. So we can see now that I've taken, I've gone 2 strips in and I've used the first 2 strips here and locked that in place, and you can see now that if I were to run that through the die cutting machine, we actually have a square lattice cut. Now if your card was a different size, then you can just realign the single line of squares. That would obviously extend that, but if that's what you wanted to do, you could die cut this section, and then I won't die cut it, but if you bear in mind, if we were to die cut this, this would be the next line of squares. You could then just move the die again, re-slot that into position the way you did here, and just die cut again, and that is what will allow you to keep on extending this lattice work for as large a piece as you need. Now you can see also that why and how this would work if you were to extend into a DL card this way. You just line it up to the size of the card that you wanted to create for. So I've just got another piece of card set to the side of me here, which I think is roughly about DL length at least. So if we can line this up, and then we line up our die, slot that into place, and you can probably almost hear, if I keep quiet, that actually locks into position there. That means that you won't get a double edge cut on through the apertures that you've already cut. You'd obviously stick this into place with a little bit of washi tape or double-sided tape, and then you run this through the die cutting machine, and then there you can see that you have the length of a DL card there. So this is what makes these so incredibly versatile, and that is how you would extend, particularly these dies and the circle die also. So just while I'm here, and I have this piece, I've already cut the square that I need for this, but wanted to cut this down to size. Also, it's useful to show you that there is no outer edge cut on these dies, so when you die cut actually both of these, this is the piece that you'll be left with within your card. So then you need to either take your ruler and your knife to cut around this, or you go to your trimmer and you have to cut this out of the cardstock. This is actually a really useful I can't think of my words. A really useful aspect of the design, because if you think about it, if I just keep this as it were, I could actually create a card blank with this. We have the apertures within the front of the card here, and if I were to fold this, obviously we'd do this slightly better, but if you have yourself a really unique card blank. So again, that's just a really lovely design feature that you can make the most of. So I'm just going to cut this out and it'll all become apparent why in a second. So there we are, we have our lattice work, and this is exactly what I've done to create the square lattice that I have ready for the front of the card. So, as I say, because I'm making a square card, I created a square lattice, and hopefully now you can see how this square piece came about, and you can see exactly where I would have overlapped here. There was actually no double cutting, which I know sometimes with other dies, if you line them up because they haven't quite gone through, and when you realign the die up with what you've just cut, sometimes if it doesn't click in just right, you do get some double edge cutting, which can sort of spoil the look of the die. But say with Lisa's dies, you don't get this, and that square lattice fits perfectly on my 6x6 card. Okay, now bear all of that in mind. I've actually taken myself a piece of Lisa's design paper. As I say, it's from the vintage garden set, so it's a really pretty set. And this time I've actually taken this more of the solid die, which pairs nicely with the lattice work there. And I have die cut this in exactly the same way, to be honest. You can see there that I've been able to pop this into position. Those raised pieces, which actually do the cutting, slot perfectly into the paper that you've already die cut. And then to extend this to fit my square card, all I've done again is just lined up two of the columns, run that through the die cutting machine again, and we end up with a square section for our card. Now, it may divide you as to whether you would actually want to use your really pretty paper in this way. And to be honest, I was a little bit hesitant myself, but I thought, no, I want a lovely design paper in the background, but I don't want to cut into it too much. And what this die set does, and again, the same with the circles also, it actually gives you that stitched or that sort of perforated section. So what it has done to this lovely design paper is given it a real bit of interest in the background, as you can see, with all this stitch detail, but you can still see the pattern. So I think that's just a really novel way just to add a little bit of extra detail, a bit of interest to your design paper. Now, as you can see, when I put this onto the white card, all the white squares actually pop through, so that actually gives this design paper again a completely different look, but not taken away from the design itself. Now, if you actually look onto the card that I done for the sample there, I've actually mounted the design paper in the background onto coloured paper there. So again, you can add that complete contrast if you wanted to. I've actually mounted this onto some lime pearlescent paper. So when the light catches that you have that sort of element shining through the design. I think this time though I will actually leave that on the white, and I shall just use my glue, which I think I've unclogged, ready for use. But you know what it's like when we're live, it never works, so I shall just put myself, okay, that's being a little bit slow, let's see, put that on there. That isn't working that well, is it? Okay, take the top off. There we are. Well, that'll be enough. That'll be enough to get this onto the card for you, give you an idea. Okay, so we'll pop that on square. As I say, it would be quite nice if you did want to mat and lay this onto another card, onto another sort of complementary card also, but I quite like the modern effect of putting it straight onto the background card itself. And I really like white on a card. I think as the years have gone on, I've really sort of found out what my style is, and I do like to have white on a card. Okay, so we have that sitting on there, which I think in itself looks really, really pretty. So we could put our layer onto the top there, and I think also if you choose the right colour, you can still have the beauty of the design paper in the background. I know you're covering it up, and I say it will divide some people, and do you want to cover up such a beautiful piece of design paper? I think sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, and I think perhaps it depends on how brave you're feeling that day, but you still do get elements of that, the butterfly and the flowers coming through. Alternatively, if you didn't want to do it that way, why not just put half on? This is the piece that I cut straight from, and it's just a single die in itself, and I think possibly this time I might actually do this. We still have the design paper to the one side, or we can leave it this side, and you can see the butterfly. It's entirely up to you, but it gives a different feel and you get the best of both worlds. So I think possibly at this stage, I think I might leave it like that, and I can use this for another card later on. Now, the next thing we want to do, obviously, is go ahead with our little decorative panel, the You Inspire Me panel. So this comes as a single die in itself. Again, we don't have a cutting edge around the back or around the outside, so the same way that this was left on the inside of a card, you will die cut this, and then you can cut whatever size border you want around the outside. So that's the beauty of and the flexibility of having a die like that. So what I've done, I've actually die cut this a couple of times. I've die cut it with a pink pearlescent card like this, and then I die cut it again with the same colour card that I've used for the lattice in the background. And what I've done, I've paper pieced the lighter colour into the background here, so this is what is making the wording and the outline of all the flowers really stand out. When I die cut from the pink pearlescent card, I took out all the internal sections because I really did only want the outlines to be shown, and I put that onto a piece of double-sided adhesive, the same size as the panel. What that has allowed me to do in this section that I haven't pieced here, that is still sticky. So I think it's just a neater way, and certainly easier for me on screen for you now, as opposed to re-piece pieces back into this without using glue. You can use glue, of course, and I did use glue on this panel that I've used here. Excuse the bit there, I just misjudged where I placed my die. But say, using glue, the glue that you're used to using, is perfectly acceptable, and once it all dries flat, and you wouldn't know the difference. So just for the purposes of demoing on screen actually here, to have the double-sided adhesive makes life an awful lot easier. Now, I will show you actually how we paper piece into this. The bulk of the paper piecing I've done with this lighter colour card. That is straightforward. I die cut the die from the lighter panel and just took the pieces around the word and paper pieced them back in. To do the flowers, you see here that I've done a couple already. To do the flowers, I die cut the panel. Once again, I'm just looking for where I die cut it. Where did I put it? Excuse me a second. Oh, I'll put it somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, now to die cut the flowers, I die cut the panel again from a piece of glitter card. And all I've done, let me put this onto a piece of darker card so you can see, and you can see here that I didn't touch the majority of the die, and all I've done is just taken out the petals of the flowers that I wanted to transfer. You can see here directly we have the pieces from this bottom flower paper piece directly into here, and the top corner here also. Now this can be left set aside. This is perfectly usable for another project. Fortunately, because this is a thicker cardstock, all the pieces are holding in. Now to paper piece these other sections, what I've done actually, I've used another set of Lisa's design papers. It's the Pretty Petals, and I have a couple of little pieces just left over like this. I mean, I have a heart that was sitting there, and I should probably still leave that to one side, but I have this tiny little piece which I can't bring myself to throw out to be honest, but what it will enable me to do is die cut this top flower and die cut this bottom flower to paper piece into here. Now I've done this separately. I had another smaller piece which I can just show you here, where I've die cut just this flower. When you're paper piecing and you know you don't want the whole die, there is no need, you don't need to sort of waste paper and die cut the whole piece. So this technique is absolutely ideal for using up all your little scraps that you can't bring yourself to throw away, but you might want to use. So you can see here that I've die cut just this top flower from this small section of design paper, and I've taken the central pieces of that flower and die cut and paper pieced them back into this. And I'm going to do exactly the same with this bottom flower here, and I shall use this larger flower. So if you can see that that larger flower here fits exactly onto that design paper that I need. Now it does make this paper piecing to be really, really subtle. Obviously you can go to town and use something which is in complete contrast. I'll just bring in this piece here, which again you can see, even though I've used pastel colours, and again you could argue that you could go even bolder again, but I do like to go with a slightly more pastel colour palette. But I think this is just a really nice way and really subtle way to use up your spare pieces of paper. And if you have enough contrast in the paper, I think going subtle when you paper piece like this, I think just really works. I really like that, especially if you're making this. Now if you bear with me, this isn't going through because of the way I've placed that. There we are. Now I think this being really subtle is going to be a really lovely gift for somebody, say to use as a bookmark. I think there's enough contrast with the Pretty Petals there. Now, yes, I did use that the right way round. So if I take this die away, now admittedly it's going to look a little bit all over the place because it's not the way that you would usually die cut your flowers. Now, did I cut that far enough over? I don't know, but I did. Now, I think that might have been actually my error there. So what I'm going to do, you say you can ignore the sections that you don't really want to use, and what you can do, you can take your tweezers, and this is where Lisa's really fine tip tweezers, which are actually really sharp. You can take out these sections and you can start piecing them back into your project, like so. And that is how we paper piece. Now, doing this now, you can actually see the advantage of having the double-sided tape in the background. But, as I say, glue does work perfectly well as well. You could either put, I would say put the glue on the back of here, but on some of the larger areas you can actually take your glue, especially if it's a precision nib glue that you have. You can actually add glue to the sections like so. It's entirely up to you the way that you prefer to work. Now you can see how therapeutic that can be, just sitting there and just placing in your new pieces into your project. Now, what I have done, I didn't die either that or the page slipped. I didn't die cut far enough over, so I haven't got enough sections to complete that. That is an error in what I done. So I'll tell you what I will do. I'll bring out my other piece of paper that I used, and all I need is just these sections here, and I think I can probably do that from there. So this is me crafting on the hoof and realise I've made a mistake, which everybody does. Obviously when you're not doing it live you can get away with these things. But it just sort of goes to prove that there is always another way round. I just need to make sure that when I put that through there, that I will actually die cut the section that I want. So I shall line that up. And I think this time what I might do, just make sure that doesn't move, I shall just stick that into place. Like so. There we are. No, that's moved again, isn't it? So that's being quite temperamental. So if you just bear with me a second, I will get this. And again, I'm sure this is nothing different to what people have experienced at home. And so we have these ideas, and we do actually craft on the hoof, don't we? But I think the majority of us, we always, I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll just move the sticky down there. We realise that either something isn't working, so we have to just rethink what we're doing, and we usually find a way around, don't we? We usually find a way around, so I'll just run that straight through the machine. And take the... Okay, now if I take this away, we do indeed, that piece has stayed in there. Now, with some of these smaller pieces, they will actually stay in the die. So you can drive yourself mad looking for some of these smaller pieces, but we can add that straight from there. We have, oh, now I need to pick that up, this piece that can go into here. There we are. I knew we'd get there in the end. And we can add that into there. And then that one in there. And it's given us a little bit more green into that, but I don't say with the nature of what we're doing, that really doesn't matter at all. Now, there's been other design team members who've used these dies, obviously, and I think even myself, you don't always have to paper piece this. You can just die cut this twice. or die cut it once even, and just lay this directly onto another piece of card, then you'll have a little bit of relief and a bit of dimension going on in the design as well. That is entirely up to you. So there are different ways of using it. I just wanted to show you this way today. So now we can think about putting the rest of the card together. And I think actually this time round I might just use the half trellis here. So I'm just going to my glue works. Now everything seems to be conspiring against me today. Okay, so we can there we are, it's working now. So we can add our glue to our piece there. Bear with me. And Lisa's left enough of a width of these trellis pieces to actually enable you to add glue really quite straightforward. I find it really tricky and really fiddly when some of the die pieces are just so thin that there's no chance of spreading glue onto it without sort of coming over the edges. Okay, so we can line that up on there like so. And then we can put our piece on here, but obviously we need to attach this into the corners, and I have my two pieces, well, I have all the pieces, all the squares that I've cut out from the centre there, but I've kept two of them, and we line up the panel so we can see which squares the two corners will actually correspond to. And what we need to do, we need to bear in mind that when we put these little squares back in, that we need to have enough room for them to move. So we don't want to put glue all the way around the square. We only want to put glue on an L shape. So we have the L shape there and we have the L shape there. Okay, that makes sense. And then we can pop those squares back into those sections there. And just hold that down in position. With this in position, I would say, because that allows the card to bend and give you the access into those. What actually might be quite nice, if you didn't want this to be removable, you could also add two pieces up there. So that is a completely different way of attaching this panel to your card. Also, so that would actually be quite a nice way of attaching that. It gives a completely different look to the design, I think. Also, it probably could still be removable also, actually, if you think about it, but I think I'll just leave it with those two at the bottom, because when we stand that up, that's enough of a stopper for this to stay within. So that is basically the card finished. Now, it depends on how you want to finish off embellishments around the card. Lisa has given you lots and lots of different options with different words and sentiments. We have lots of different flowers, pearls, different ways to actually finish off the card. I think it's quite nice to have a ribbon there. Now my silicone glue isn't working either, so I can put that on afterwards, but we can put a little ribbon onto the side there, just as I've done with the green here. We can pop that in. Just move that aside. Now I think that's just a really nice little gift card. It doesn't have to be this type of thing. You can perhaps even add a little gift card. If you've bought a little store-bought gift card, it'd be quite a nice way to mount that onto the front of a card and give that as a little gift also. So I hope you found that sort of useful today. It's quite nice to see these different techniques actually shown to you as well. Sometimes we can explain things, but sometimes just watching these things, and especially if you're new to some of the designs, especially the stitch squares in the background, hopefully that made that easier for you to understand. I actually really like this colourway. I was a bit unsure as to whether I should put white on this pink one here, but looking at that on screen, that really pops. And I have to say, I think that would be just a really nice little gift to somebody, just to pep them up if you know that someone's having, just needs a little bit of cheering up. Okay, let's see if I have a look at some of your comments. Oh, Mum's with us. Hi Mum, how are you? And oh, Natasha's with us. Hi Natasha, how are you? And Jean, Elizabeth. Oh, hi Elizabeth. Oh, a few people with us today. That's great to have you back. It seems like I'm a bit all over the place with my lives at the moment, but I actually enjoyed coming back on and doing that with you today. So I shall love you and leave you to hopefully enjoy, if you've got a good afternoon. It's just stopped raining with us here in Ireland, and it looks like the sun's peeping out, so I might try and get the little puppy out for a walk. Oh, thanks Marilyn, I hope you found that really useful. It's lovely to have you here this afternoon also. Now, as usual, I will get this organised and uploaded onto YouTube, so it's there for reference at all times. I don't think there's any other messages. Lisa's doing a live with us ahead of her new shows. She's doing the live on Friday at 7 o'clock, so that will be a really lovely one for everybody to tune into. I know she's got some new things coming your way, and I think it might be a bit Christmas related also. So hopefully you'll really enjoy that. So take care everyone, and thanks for joining me this afternoon.